Another one of my biggest lessons that I learned, probably honestly the biggest lesson that I learned, was to advocate for myself, to speak up for myself, to, express myself in a way that is done in love, but also clear enough for people to understand that something hurt me, or I need something, or I need help, or whatever it is that you are advocating for, or whatever you're speaking up for yourself for. I had to learn that I have to speak up for myself because nobody else will, and I had to get over this fear that I was upsetting people or I was causing more issues or drama. And I really had to get over this idea that if I spoke up for myself, that I would lose my friends, or I would lose my job, or I will, miss out on something, or something bad or traumatic will happen. And I realized that comes from trauma. That comes from expressing myself in the past and something detrimental happening following after that. And it comes a lot from my childhood, and this will be there will be more lessons that I've learned about my childhood in regards to this particular point. But anytime I would get in trouble, or anytime it came time to speak up for myself, I would always be told to shut up, or to sit down, or to stop talking back, or to, why are you challenging me? I'm African, y'all, so that was kind of my experience growing up. And it was hard for me to really realize that I had an opinion, also that I had, my feelings mattered. And so anytime there was conflict that would arise, I would always shy away from speaking up, or shy away from expressing myself, because in fear of losing that person, or in fear of them arguing with me about what I felt, or trying to discredit how I felt, or maybe I'm the crazy one. And that comes from being gaslit a lot of toxic relationships too, a lot of male relationships or a lot of romantic, I guess, relationships that I would be in had a lot of those kind of gaslighting scenarios that I talk about. And so I've been learning to advocate for myself, speak up for myself. Even with my job, sometimes I felt uncomfortable, saying, no, I don't really think I can get this task done in this amount of time, but I can do it in this amount of time. Like, for some reason, I just couldn't do that because I feel like I pissed my boss off, or, do something that, or I feel like I couldn't ask for time off, or I feel like if I did that means I would lose my job, or I get fired. And I had to really come to understanding that speaking up for yourself doesn't mean that you are against the person. You are just against what's being done to you, or what's happening in the situation. And I think also people who have not been emotionally matured, or have not emotionally matured, think that anytime I speak against the thing that's being done to me, they think I'm against them. And I'm not against you. I'm just against the thing that's being said or being done. I still love you. I still care about you. But the thing that's being done, I'm not for. So I have to advocate for it myself. So that was really hard. I had to go to therapy for that, y'all. Like, that was probably one of the biggest things, because it got to a point where I was even afraid to, child, of course my camera cut off as I am in the middle of me going in on self-advocacy. But yeah, I had to really go to therapy and get some healing and help on that, because I really got to a point where I was afraid to speak up for myself, because I didn't want to lose friends. I didn't want to, get fired. I didn't want to hurt people's feelings. I didn't want to cause any more conflict that there already was. But I knew that I was causing conflict within if I didn't take that extra step to speak up for myself. And even if I lose my friends, or lose my employer, or lose whatever in the process of me advocating for myself, that was something that I did not need to begin with. Because if someone's willing to cut you off, or to stop being friends with you, or fire you, all because you were advocating for yourself in a reasonable way, then that person or that thing did not truly value you the way you thought. And if anything, it's for your good. So bye-bye. On to the next. I also had to realize that when I did try to advocate for myself, it was a lot of on the other side of on the other spectrum of that, I used to like go off on people and cuss people out and just fight, and that was an unhealthy way. This was kind of like tying into the last point, because I used to just be a pop off, and I still am sometimes. You know, I kind of teeter-totter from either end of the spectrum, but I think because I've been on this work of like trying to be more loving and be more sweet and be more nice, I've kind of like jumped from that end of the spectrum of going off on people to like, okay, I'm not gonna say anything because I don't want to come off rude or I don't want to go off. And so I struggled with either one of the spectrums, but I'm learning to come to the balance of the two and advocate for myself and speak up for myself and do it in love. I don't have to cuss you out, but I'm not going to silence myself either. I'm going to speak up I'm going to speak up for myself and advocate for myself and stand in that truth, period. If I lose you in the process, I need you to begin with. So that's that. So the number 12 lesson that I learned in 2020 was I had to learn that I was worthy of good things. And God, like, I'm telling you, this was probably, I swear every lesson I feel like was like the biggest lesson, but this one was for real, like something I had to work through, and I'm actually still working through, because it's a belief, it's a mindset that I had. And so, you know, growing up, again, didn't really get much growing up, as far as outside of like my basic needs. I would go to my parents and ask them for things, and it would always be met with a no, or, you know, that's not important, or, you know, even like looking at me like, why are you even asking me that? And in that, it taught me that my desires didn't matter. Desiring good things did not matter for me, or what I wanted doesn't matter. It's not important. And I didn't feel worthy enough to even desire these things. And so when it came to my relationship with God and, you know, having all these desires for my future or for certain things in my life, I couldn't even go to him and ask him or be real with him. Like, God, this is what I want. This is what I desire. I couldn't even go to him and be honest about that, because I had a poor reflection of God because of the relationship or the lack thereof that I had with my physical father here on earth. And so really the type of relationship that you have with your father on earth will be reflected in your relationship with God. So if your father was absent, you will look at God as someone who's not really there. Or if your father on earth did not provide for you, you're going to look to God as someone who can't provide to you or provide for you. And with me, those two things rang true. But also, I couldn't go to my father about things that I wanted or desired. So that translated into my relationship with God, where I didn't feel comfortable going to God asking him for things that I wanted, because I felt like he thought, why are you asking me that? We have more important matters on the earth that we got to take care of. Or that, you know, he would just tell me no, that you can't have it, because why? You know, but I had to break that off of me, because I believe that my God desires that I have great things and experience amazing things and see good things in my life. God is not like my father, and I'm working on it. I had to also go to therapy for that too, and speak affirmations over myself that I am worthy of good things. I am worthy of amazing experiences. I deserve beautiful things to happen to me. I deserve the desires on my heart. I mean, God put those desires on your heart for a reason. So I believe that God wants to see those things happen for you, but you have to want to see those things happen for yourself too. That's what this faith walk is all about. And so I had to really just work on this belief that I am worthy of good things. So that honestly, I don't know where to rank it, but that's probably one of the top 10, or that's one of the top 5 of the biggest lessons that I had to learn in 2020, child. Because baby, it was a struggle seeing other people, you know, get the things that I wanted. And I'm like, God, like, I want that too. But I feel like I can't want it. I don't know why. Like, where's this come from? And he showed me, you know, from my childhood, and how, you know, all of my desires were denied. All of my desires were denied. And God does not want to deny his desires. He wants to make them come to pass for you. You just have to want that for yourself. So I'm gonna leave it at that. To tie in with 12 and to tie in with 11 and 12, number 13, I had to learn that a lot of my broken beliefs were from my childhood. Now, this is something that I actually discovered in 2019, but I didn't really understand the fullness of it until 2020 when we were in the house during a pandemic, and we had to sit with ourselves and learn things about ourselves and why I thought the way I thought and why I felt the way I felt and why I believed the things that I believed. And it stems from your childhood. And this is something that I study this. Okay, I've been studying this since an undergrad when I got my degree in psychology. Now I'm getting my master's in mental health and counseling. I knew this, but I don't know. I guess, sometimes things can happen for others, but you just don't think it happens to you. It happens to you too. Like, your childhood affects you. Like, it affects your adult thinking, relational life. It just does. And sometimes we think we're invincible. Sometimes we think we have greater power over the things that have happened to us. And in due time, if you're doing the work, you can have power over the damage that was done to you. But you have to come to the fact and the awareness of, I had trauma in my childhood. I had things that happened to me that have affected the way I think, feel, believe, see things, whatever, how I move in my adult life. So I had to really just come to that acknowledgement. That was probably another one of my big lessons that I learned in 2020. I had to come to that acknowledgement, like fully come to that acknowledgement, and then start doing the work. A lot of my broken beliefs stem from my childhood, stem from the broken relationship that I had with my parents. And it affects the way I view success, the way I view healing, the way I view myself. And I had to really go to work on my mind. I had to really go to work on the way I, look at God, look at life, look at myself. So, yeah, that was kind of like a little side lesson that I learned in encompassing all the other ones that I just mentioned before. The number 14th lesson that I learned in 2020 was taking time to rest and self-reflect. I mean, hey, we by force had to learn to sit still and self-reflect. We had a lot of time in the house to sit down and think and reflect. And this kind of goes back to the whole being overdoing. I had to learn how to be still, honey. I had to learn to just sit down and take time to really reflect. Like, sometimes things happen to us and we kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, they happened to us, and then we keep it moving. But we don't ever take that time to just sit down and reflect over, okay, this happened. Why did this happen? How did it happen? How did it affect me? What, like asking ourselves those questions. And so I had to learn that is an important practice for me in order to process through things that have happened to me that I've experienced in my past, things that I haven't processed. And, especially with trauma, you know what I'm saying? Like, when you experience a lot of trauma, you have to acknowledge that it's something that you experience and work through that, or else that trauma will find its way out, whether it's through headaches or through acne or weight gain or lack of sleep. Trauma is stored in the body some kind of way, and it has to get out. And if you're not doing the work to self-reflect and learn and talk it out, or see a therapist, or do the work to heal mentally or emotionally, it's going to find its way out someplace else. And so taking the time to self-reflect, sit down, self-reflect, and then do the work and heal. And the last thing to encompass this whole thing was I had to learn to choose me and invest in myself. I had to learn to love myself, honey. In 2020, I feel like we're always obtaining a new level of self-love. But 2020 just really, with all the trauma that I experienced in my past and doing all of the reflective work and doing the healing work I needed to do, I realized that I need to use this time in my singleness to point all things back to me right now. I have to use this time to invest in myself. I have to use this time to take care of me and love myself. And that was probably one of the biggest lessons I learned in 2020. I do this all the time, right? But no, like, I feel like, that I had to really learn for myself that I have to love myself. I have to choose me. I have to put myself first, because if my cup was not full, baby, I have nothing to give you, okay? But brokenness, bitterness, and anger and hurt. And who wants that? Who wants to give that? I don't want to do that. And I know the kind of energy I want to put out, which is love and, you know, compassion and impact and influence and encouragement and all of these great positive things I want to put out into the world. But I can't do that with a broken spirit. I can't do that with, you know, trauma that has not been dealt with. I can't do that with low self-esteem, low self-confidence, low self-worth. I had to really take this time to do the work and start loving myself, reading books about self-love, watching videos on self-love, learning to invest in myself, in my looks, and how I feel about myself on the physicality, but also invest in myself in the soul, invest in my spirit, going to therapy, journaling, praying, meditating, talking to God, you know, spending time with friends, doing the work to heal from the inside out. And I just learned that self-love is the best love, you know. To be honest, like, you have to love yourself and others to love others. If you don't know how to love yourself, you won't know how to love. Okay, y'all, my phone being ghetto again. But what I was trying to say to close off that last point is to love yourself, because if you don't know how to love yourself, you won't know how to love other people. So yeah, that kind of sums up the whole, like, working on your soul, working on yourself, loving yourself, healing part of this section of this video, or the section of these lessons. So tune into the next video to the last 5 lessons that I learned. They're gonna be a little bit more random and not as specific, but still real lessons that we all need in 2021.